Hey everybody, Tekking 101 here, and yeah, time to continue the Divine Comedy, finish the Divine Comedy series that I started like almost a year ago. Sorry, it's been a while. Yeah, but we're almost done. We're literally almost done with this, and it's really kind of weird because it's like I started this series, Tekking Reads, to kind of do like a vlog series on certain books that I have read, and we've been stuck on the same book. Well, it's an epic poem, so of course I'm not going to be able to get it done in one video, but we've been stuck on it ever since I started, so I want you guys to know I do read other stuff aside from this, because that's all I've read. I mean, I have a crap ton of books, okay, I do, like actual books, not just all manga, you know, not counting all the freaking, you know, Anthony Horowitz, you know, the Power of Five series I've read, you know, I've read the freaking, you know, World War Z by Max Brooks, I also have the, what's it called, the Zombie Survival Guide by Max Brooks, probably shouldn't throw those in there with the next ones, but also Great Gatsby, this is just a collection of poems by Edgar Allan Poe, but it's really good because I like Poe. And Tales of Norse Mythology, which are really kind of trippy and weird, even weirder than the stuff you see in the Divine Comedy. But yeah, Norse Mythology. I might not do like a whole series on this, but suffice it to say, if you thought Thor was really badass in the Marvel comic series, yeah, he's a little bit more. Yeah, it's just kind of ridiculous. That's the kind of series where, like, we have a giant that could, like, hiccup and, like, the earth could explode. That's the kind of shit we get into in Norse mythology. Got all these John Green books that I've read, you know, Looking for Alaska, Abundance of Catherine's, Fault in Our Stars. I actually know a friend that's going to be an extra in the Tifios movie, so we got that. Got freaking Shakespeare, Macbeth up in here. This omnibustium compendium of the four... well, not all of them, but 44 short stories, or comprising 4 complete novels of the works of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle for the Greatest Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. So, you know, that's a freaking collection we have there. The Odyssey, because I'm a huge fan of Greek mythology. I don't have the Iliad. I want to get my hands on the Iliad at some point. And the really great thing is, and the Time Machine by H.G. Wells. Kind of a really short read, but really, really cool. But, you know, it's kind of weird, because you can pick up most of these older books at, you know, the store for, like, at, like, a Barnes & Noble for very cheap. Like, and I could have gone, I remember when I went up there last, I had, like, there was, like, a complete book of all the illustrations from the Divine Comedy, and the thing was, like, gilded and really elaborate. The thing was only $15. You know, the Time Machine, this thing only cost me, like, $1.50. So a lot of these older books, even the freaking... This Poe book series, which is really awesome cover, and you got the awesome illustrations in... Okay, that's not an illustration. Dang it, really awesome illustrations in here and everything. And this series took me like, this was like $10. So it's like incredibly cheap how these things are. Norse mythology was like $6. You know, it's just... It's crazy. But anyway, let's get to the Divine Comedy. Let's finish this sucker up. We got the last few rings or circles of heaven to conquer here, and then we have to be on to God himself. The big guy, the creator of the universe and the Emperyon. This is... Dante meets him, and yeah, it's despite what you might think God might look like, we actually get to see him, or at least Dante Alighieri's interpretation of him. So first, though, we left off on the 5th sphere, which is the Mars sphere, the warriors of faith, those who died in like a crusade, who died for the cause of you know, in the name of God. So he moves on beyond that, and we move to the 6th sphere, which is Jupiter. This is kind of where it gets to the actual, like, we were jumping around a lot earlier. We were jumping around from, you know, we go from Mercury and then Venus, and then we jump to the Sun, and then we go back to like to Mars, and then we kind of like move around a lot. But here we just skip right from Mars to Jupiter, which is the just rulers. This is the place in heaven where the kings that actually ruled with justice and in the name of God, and they were kings, but they encapsulated everything of what a king should be and more. I think it was always kind of funny whenever I was in school and we were learning about, you know, the different kings in Europe and everything. We'd always learn about how, like, more often we'd learn about how the king done goofed and he ended up getting beheaded by his followers. Like King so-and-so, you know, he did something really wrong with taxes, so they lopped his head off. And then his successor, King blah blah blah, the 16th, they also did something with taxes, and he got his head lopped off. So I remember I actually raised my hand to my history professor and was like, isn't it kind of weird that most of the kings in the olden times ended up getting their heads, like, ended up their rule being ended by getting their head lopped off? And it's just like, he's like, yeah, that's basically how it happened. All the famous ones, anyway, had their heads lopped off. But these are the kings that actually ruled in the name of God. They ruled with justice. They made all the right calls. And as you can probably imagine, it's a very select bunch that are here. Who is here? Well, actually, before we get to the actual people that are in here, the way it's actually laid out in the heavens is that it actually spells a phrase in Latin. And I'm not even going to try to attempt how to pronounce this in Latin. No way. But basically the translation is, it's spelled out in the stars, "Love justice, ye that judge the earth." And the last M in that sentence, and not the M of the sentence I just spoke, because that's obviously translated into English, so the last M of that sentence, when it's in its original in Latin, is actually a eagle, and the eagle represents like the symbol of a just king or the just warrior. Is a giant imperial eagle that represents that. So yeah, that's basically how it's laid out in the heavens, and we're going to get to see that a lot more when we get more into the spheres, and we've kind of seen that already, how the exact way it's laid out is kind of a symbol of who is there. Like, for example, with the moon, we had the moon was the, I forget what they're called. Hold on, let me look it up. The moon is the inconstant, the ones that, like the nuns that took a vow of chastity and ended up having to breach that, but not of their own accord. And the way the craters on the moon look and are shaped is representative of that. So it's very interesting how before the time of real astrological science became, big, and we actually started to understand what stars are, what planets are, what the gas giants were, what the sun really is made of. They came up with all these, like, everything had to have a meaning. Like those markings on the moon up there, they're not just craters, they actually represent something. So very interesting the way they interpret these things, and that's the way that the Jupiter ring is laid out. So here we have David, Hezekiah, and Trajan, all of which I'm not really sure who are those. Although it is funny here that they mention that these are actually people that are converted from medieval legends. See, the thing is with Christianity, and nobody should really get angry at me for saying this, because it's not just the truth with Christianity, it's really the truth for anything. History is very inconsistent depending on who's writing it. It can change very easily. Just going along with this, and we're going to get into this more, because I think in the next circle we're going to deal with paganism a little bit more, but the deal with paganism was that when the Christian Church, or the Catholic Church, became really prominent in England, they really tried to wipe off all the pagan traditions, or they tried to rename them, or like for example, Christmas is actually a representative of a pagan holiday or a pagan festival referred to as Saturnalia. So they really warped these things around, and history is not as adamant as we think it. Like, we look at the way it's laid out now, just like it's so simple. This famous Christian lived 2,000 years ago, and he might not even have the same name. The very name of Jesus Christ even has been debated, has been changed over the millennia, because you can't keep these stories straight over 2,000 years when you don't have reliable records. So there's even discussions about that, like Jesus' name was actually Jesus or Johannes or some other interpretation, and then just over the years, over so much transfer of the language has evolved in the areas that it passed over, his name eventually got translated in from Latin to this language to medieval Latin to all these other different languages. So stuff can change over the millennium, most certainly. So these are the people that were trying, and by the time Dante wrote the novel, just converted these people from medieval legend into actual Christian legend. Constantine is also here, which I'm not really. I watched the Keanu Reeves movie, and that was a pretty badass interpretation of Constantine. Although I did hear that was based off a comic strip or a comic book, and I've never read the comic book. But yeah, I'm glad to know Keanu Reeves is in heaven. He's a pretty okay actor. William II of Sicily, and to Dante's amazement, Riflus the Trojan. This is where it is. This is where the pagan thing comes in. I thought it was in the Saturn sphere. So, Riflus the Trojan is actually a pagan that was saved by the mercy of God and got sent to the fifth circle. So it's also going back to the whole thing with the Catholicism kind of grip on England, and how it really tried to just some of them actually did kill the pagans, but a lot of them wanted to convert the pagans to the true word. Just like, okay, you pagans out here, you are worshiping the wrong god, all these practices are actually blasphemy, we're giving you the opportunity to see the true word and come to our light. And a lot of pagans were definitely killed, or they decided to get killed, other than going to something that they didn't believe in. Others actually falsely just said, oh, well, okay, yeah, if you're going to kill us, okay, yeah, sure, okay, yeah, we're Christians, yeah, go for it. But I guess, in this interpretation, you can say, like, oh, he was a pagan, but he actually did disregard his belief in his cause, and he got into the Catholicism light. Because in the interpretation of the Paradiso, that's basically like, this is basically a story of what happens if Christianity is real. All the stuff in the Bible is all accurate, and this is the real afterlife. So yeah, it's kind of dark when you look at it like that, because when you consider it that way, all the people that were worshiping Allah, or like Muslims or Hindus or any other religion, would end up in hell in this universe, because this is the interpretation. Like, hey, guess what? Yeah, Christianity's real. So yeah, we have that. And really, that's pretty much all there is here in the Just Rulers section. So moving on, we have the seventh sphere of Saturn, or the Contemplatives. These are the people that were secluded into the Word of God. These are the people that would go on like an entire like a spiritual journey. I'm gonna disregard. I'm not gonna take a wife. I'm not gonna have any relationship with anybody. All I'm gonna need is myself. And I'm going to try to contemplate and try to figure out exactly what's God's message, what does he really want, and just try to kind of figure out the truth behind life itself. That's all my life is going to be dedicated to. Dante actually has a discussion with somebody here. His name is Peter Damien, and they discuss monotheism. I can't pronounce this right. It means the act of secluding yourself or cloistering yourself away in either like a monastery or somewhere where it's just you trying to figure out, like the thinker, just like what does it all mean, that kind of thing. And they receive a very high level of they get to a very high level of heaven, because these are the people that didn't just accept the word of the church. They didn't just attend the pews every Sunday and just go in there and sit down and like listen to the word of God and just do that. That they actually tried to figure it out on their own. They tried to come up with their own answer to exactly what this is. These were the people that were dedicated to trying to answer the great question of the universe. Now, the great question of the universe are simply not answerable while you're on Earth, but still, these people still attempted to try. They weren't foolish, they were just trying to figure it all out, and they could be seen kind of as worthy, because they actually stuck with this their entire life. It's not like they just, okay, well, we need to figure this out, oh, okay, we can't, alright, moving on to something else. They actually devoted their lives to this, and they were the true contemplators, of the true thinkers of their age. So that's how that works. And something else that happens here, and is something that really is something that will happen later on, and definitely since we're getting really high up in the higher echelon of heaven, is Beatrice's appearance, which is something that actually changes throughout the period of the novel, because Beatrice is an actual angel, and wherever you are in heaven, depending on what that sphere represents, or depending on who is in that sphere, her physical appearance will change. Beatrice represents theology in her purest form, so therefore this place, which is trying to understand the true meaning of God, or the people that are dedicated to theology in its purest essence, because of that, she becomes much more increasingly lovely, as Dante puts it. So, you can just take that what you will. She becomes increasingly beautiful as she gets higher up into the sphere of heaven. So, there is that. Alright, so right about here, we get to the eighth sphere, which is not a planet, it is the fixed stars, and it represents faith, hope, and love. And right about here is where we start to get really metaphysical. This is the point where I warned you guys about, where, in hell, we can understand hell because they're kind of beneath us. Purgatory, we can kind of understand purgatory because they're on the same level of us, as people that, they didn't do anything really that mortally sinful, but they didn't really do anything, they didn't really purge their sins before they died. So, we kind of at least understood the level of purgatory. As I warned you guys, when we get to heaven, we're not really meant to understand a lot of this, and I'm sure even Dante, when he wrote the poem, didn't really understand a lot of it. He just kind of wrote it in a very a way that's open to interpretation, and that's the best way you can really look at it when you are writing about something like this, because obviously you wouldn't be able to comprehend heaven. There's no words that you can put into this book that would be able to understand the whole concept and put it into cement like we did with hell, like we did with purgatory. So it has to be a very aloof concept. So we get to the fixed stars, and this is pretty much where all the highest echelon of mortals reside. This is where all the famous, like the pop stars of the Bible are at. This is where the Virgin Mary's at. This is where St. Peter's at. This is where St. James or St. John, pretty much all the saints that are really famous here are here. A pope is here, one of the popes that did not end up in hell. So yeah, it's Pope Boniface VIII. He is here. So yeah, it's just, I'm glad that some of the popes actually made it to heaven. That's really kind of sad when you look at the Divine Comedy and every level of hell Dante visits. You're just like, oh, there's Pope, there's Pope so-and-so, there's that pope that screwed up there, So yeah, popes, we're I'm glad that this generation is not the only generation the Catholic Church is really corrupt, because we can make the obvious, like, oh, you pastor, little boys. We actually have, there's even a scandal going around in my area right now. So it's like, at my store, like, every day we get the newspaper, we have to put out for people to buy. And for, like, the past month, we've had, like, the same picture of the same priest who's being indicted for, pedophilia and, I don't even go into more detail. You know where I'm going here. And we've had to have this same story like 3 times, just because, so much more evidence is being introduced into the case. So, it's a very hot button issue right now, certainly, not just around here, but in, everywhere. And, so back then, though, I'm glad they were like, well, at least they're also having problems back then. It's not like that time was all pure and happy and we're the ones that brought it to shit. It kind of already was in shit, so that's a thing. So yeah, so right here is the fixed stars, and it's not really any kind of area. It's just the stars. It's the constellations. Gemini, the constellation where Dante was born under, is here. So he actually stands underneath this constellation of Gemini, which that's just thinking about that now, how he's kind of just taking it all in. He's taking it all in, the fact that he's here. He's in this place which is up until now was completely unreachable. You look up at the stars in the sky and be like, that's the star of Gemini. You were born under that, and now you're there. You're at that place. It's just like if I were to magically, like if I had a spaceship and I went into the center of the constellation of Taurus, I would be like Keanu Reeves. I'd be like, whoa. That's all the words you could really fathom, just like, whoa. So he's there, and he actually looks down at all the other 7 planets that he has visited in his journey on heaven. So he's looking down at Jupiter and Mars and the Sun and all the places he's traveled, and at the very bottom he can see this dinky little blue orb, this little blue marble out in the middle of, like, such an innocent, dinky little thing at this point where he's at right now, and that is, of course, the planet Earth that he views from this point up in heaven. So, it's just that that's just how it is. That they call it the humble planet of Earth, and that's really what it is. It's like he's starting to finally realize the true point of it all, in that we're so small, we're so insignificant. We can't be looked at like all the human problems you have aren't really problems when you view them at this light. We're just so humble because we're just going about our lives, and none of it really all matters in the grand scheme of things because there's all of this out there. So he's finally starting to get that concept, but we're going to go beyond that. And I think this is really the final point where you can finally understand this concept. Like standing in the night sky, staring down at all these planets and at planet Earth. Some of you might be able to grasp that concept, and even me, like, you might have difficult because you can't obviously do it unless you want to train for, several decades and become an astronaut, which I don't think is available to many of us. But yeah, so this is really the final point we're going to be able to, actually maybe even have a semblance of understanding, because beyond this, Dante goes to the final sphere of heaven, the 9th sphere, or the premium mobile. The angels. This is where all the angels survive. And of course, because this is the area where Beatrice is from, she becomes increasingly more beautiful here. Although this is not, she does not become her most beautiful here, but of course this is where she is. It's kind of like what happened with Virgil. Virgil was originally from Limbo, or the first circle of hell. So that's where, he went, and he was the most accepted, and he was the one that his views were the most appreciated, because that's where he was from when Dante had his first pilgrimage through hell. So now he's up in heaven, and he's at the very edge of the universe. He's basically on the edge, he's like, universe, outside of the universe, we'll be getting to that, and then right on the line, Premium Mobile, the angels' abode, he's right here, you know, so he's in the abode of the angels. Here is where we get kind of like a Thomas Aquinas type thing. Thomas Aquinas, as I mentioned in the last video, although some of you probably have not seen the last video because it's been a long time, I got lazy, but Thomas Aquinas' basic views where one of his views for the creation of the universe, or if the proofs that God exists, is the prime mover case, which is still a thing today that a lot of people, a lot of religious people tend to think is like a very valid source of the reasoning for God, and it's basically like this. Objects cannot be put in motion by themselves. They have to have another mover to be put into motion. Therefore, according to logic and on a grand universal scale, the universe could not be put into motion by itself. It had to have something else put into motion in order to continue its existence or create him. So basically, this is the exact point that is moved by God. So we're on the edge. So beyond the edge, it is God himself, or himself might not be the right way to refer to him. Just God is the one that's moving everything. So yeah, this is the right point here, and we have even Beatrice really kind of speaks about the prime mover thing, and they have a poem here. And by the way, in case you're curious, I'm reading all of this off Wikipedia, which is probably not the best way to do a vlog, just like, okay, yeah, Tekking reads. Alright, so instead of going off the source material, I'm going to read Wikipedia. I'm sorry, but Wikipedia has streamlined all this very easily. I mean, I have read the book, it's just that the book, I would have to like be bouncing around a lot here, and I want to get this done at a decent time, so I'm going off Wikipedia, which kind of streamlines everything. So I will read this poem here, which kind of Beatrice attempts to explain the creation of the universe, or how it came about, and the role of the angels to Dante. Christ did not say to his first company, "Go and preach idle stories to the world," but he gave them the teaching that is truth. And truth alone was sounded when they spoke, and thus to battle the enkindled faith. The gospel served them as both shield and lance. But now men go to preach with jests and jeers, and just as long as they can raise a laugh, the cows puff off and nothing more is asked. But such a bird nest is that cow, is that the people saw it, and that they would recognize as lies the pardons in which they confide. Now, if you're anything like me, you do not understand a word of that. So if you actually, if you were a contemplator and you sat down and tried to analyze it, you probably could come up with something. But at the moment, it seems like a roundabout way to explain the creation of the universe. So thank you, Beatrice. But anyway, once again, you know, Dante doesn't actually know the creation of the universe, so he couldn't exactly just say, oh, flat out, oh, this is what happened and this is what happened, moving on. So it has to be kind of an aloof, open to interpretation kind of concept. Alright, so Dante finally heads outside of the known universe. Let me just repeat that. Dante leaves reality. So before we even continue this, I need to kind of just make one thing perfectly clear, okay? We're out of the known universe. Physics do not apply. The laws of thermodynamics do not apply. Entropy does not apply. All of this shit does not apply anymore. So right there, just that, you like right there, if anybody out there said I can understand that concept, you can't. You simply cannot, because everything that I am doing right now, I'm interacting, you know, all the different forces that are at work right now, entropy, always at work. The laws of physics, you know, gravity, always at work. Laws of thermodynamics, like, you know, energy cannot be created or destroyed. That is in effect. All of that, not in effect anymore. So none of us can even grasp that concept. But anyway, Dante leaves the universe to the Empyrean, the prime mover. Okay, so this is the abode of God. Alright, so there's a giant rose, and all the souls that Dante has met in heaven, angel and mortal alike, or mortal soul alike, are in this rose, and the angels are just kind of flying around it, and just like bees, and they're kind of distributing love and peace for all amongst this rose, from Dante's perspective. So Beatrice, because this is actually the abode of God, becomes the most beautiful she can, you know, become in this state, and she goes into the rose and kind of just into her place along with the order of things. So this rose is kind of like, it represents the order of the universe, or in the best regards there. And Dante finally comes face to face with the big guy himself, God. And God, in the context of the Divine Comedy, looks like this. Yeah, this is God. I know the common image, and maybe not what you were expecting, really. The common image of God, for most people, is like the, you know, long, you know, white robe, big guy, beard, staff in hand, reaches down and creates all, man and woman and the earth and all that jazz. But no, here he just is, I should stop saying he, because it's not really gender specific. It is represented by 3 concentric circles that represent the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And it's at this point Dante actually transcends the concept of theology. Theology simply means the study of religion, or you believe in, a religion of some kind. However, this is going beyond just belief. It's not a matter of believing. It's not a matter of studying. Dante gets it. It's now irrefutable fact now that he has just the act of just seeing God. It ensures that. I once again, it's something that you can't exactly put into words here. It's not really possible what it's like to actually gaze upon God himself. Hold on, I have to let my dog out. Oh, Lucky. Yeah, you can't understand it. You're shaking. You're like, oh no, man, I don't know. Alright, so, okay, so, this is the point where the Divine Comedy finally ends, and I was honestly, with the ending of this, I was actually a little surprised. I originally assumed, Dante's going to go back to Earth, and he's going to finally understand what it really means about his life. His life's been turned around, and as long as he doesn't goof up in his life's been set on the right track, and he's going to receive a very high echelon in heaven. Maybe not necessarily super high, like the pop star rank, like the Surgeon or the Virgin Mary, but he would probably end up in a very, very high, decent circle within heaven. And maybe he would be a contemplator, I would assume, because he was fairly, I think he was in his 30s, he stated he was halfway to the grave, so I believed he was in his 30s during the course of the Divine Comedy, so I would believe he would probably spend the rest of his life trying to figure out what does it mean, so he would probably end up as a contemplator. But the very concept of the Divine, but that's not what happens, though. He actually, that's how the Divine Comedy basically ends, with him just being in heaven and trying to understand exactly where the divinity, where the divinity comes from, because Jesus Christ is apparently the Son of God, and this is God, so he's trying to comprehend that, and he just can't, and he's also trying to figure out where all the 3 circles come into play, and it ends with a flash of light enveloping Dante, and he just gets it all. Just like mass knowledge of the universe, what God truly is, how it all fits together, just boom, and he understands it. Of course, we can't understand it because that's just not possible, but Dante gets it, and his soul finally comes aligned with God's love. So as the Divine Comedy finally ends here, I'll read the final line actually from the book, just to make everybody happy here. Okay. Here my powers rest from their high fantasy, but already I could feel my being turned, instinct and intellectual balanced equally. That means he's becoming aligned, basically, with the Great One himself. As in the wheel whose motion nothing jars, but the love that moves the sun and the other stars. So it ends with stars once again. So he has basically become one with the universe, and that's how it ends. We don't really get to see what happens to him after that. He's just become completely enlightened, and I guess he's just staying. He's not really in our universe anymore anyway. And you actually think about it, if he actually went through all this stuff and then got sent back to Earth, you think, how would you be able to live with that knowledge that you just went through? I just went through heaven, purgatory, and hell, and I know everything. I have complete religious understanding, and I have complete theological, enlightenment. I know everything about everything, and yeah, I don't think that would work out to him for much once he gets back to his medieval life, herding goats or whatever Dante did. Oh wait, no, he was a poet. Yeah, in the concept of the Divine Comedy, and also in real life, I believe he was a poet. So yeah, that's the end of it right there, and it was a pretty good classic. I first read this when I first read the Inferno when I was a senior in high school. I remember I had to do a book report for it, and I didn't know which book to pick, but a girl I knew, showed this to me, and I started, because I heard about it beforehand. I always liked the concept of it. I always liked the concept of, I know it was like a pilgrimage through hell, and actually lays out hell in like an actual mapping system, and had different levels, and I love that. So I read it, and I did my report on it. I remember we had to do this might sound kind of kindergarten, but the way we did this was actually really fun, because our English teacher was awesome. Basically, we sat in a circle, like in a semicircle around the classroom, and we went down the line saying what our books were about, on different subjects. So I think we did like what the theme of your story was. What do you think the character development is? But we also did very basic stuff, just like the simple stuff we started off with was like, give me the title of your book, where it takes place, who's the main character, and what do you think, what's the main plot. and after that, we went into the more, in-depth stuff. So, it's funny because we start with the circle, and everyone's going around the circle and like saying their book, like, oh, like, I read An Abundance of Catherines, and it takes place in Tennessee, and it's about this guy who dated 19 girls named Catherine, and just so they would all be like that, and then we get to me, and it's just like, yeah, mine's the Divine Comedy, and it takes place in hell, and everyone laughs. I remember that quite well. I didn't read Purgatorio until my first semester of college. I read Purgatorio. I remember that quite well because I brought it to my English professor and I showed it, and like he was like, because we had like a very small classroom. It was only like 7 or 8 people in that classroom. It was a very early English class, which I do not want to do again because I was like brain dead half the time. But it was like out of this very small grouping of people, only a few of them were actually interested in the class. I remember there was a lot of people that just didn't give a fuck. So I felt bad for my English professor in a way. I mean, he wasn't my favorite professor, but I felt bad for him in a way because he would always come in and he would look around and he would be like, everyone's like, oh, and it was like he would just be like, oh my god, I don't know, whatever. So anyway, who read last night? Who read the stories? And no one would raise their hand. It was like the most unresponsive, comatose English class I've ever been in. But it was like me and like 3 other people that actually read the material and actually did the work. And I remember one day he actually saw, like, while everyone else was like texting on their cell phones, I was reading Purgatorio. And where is it actually? It's somewhere around here. Where did I put it? I just had it like 5 seconds ago. Oh, here it is. I was reading Purgatorio, and, he'd be like, oh, you're reading, the Divine Comedy, huh? And I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good, isn't it? He's like, oh, yeah, it's pretty good. So, I think about that. And Paradiso I just recently bought, like, last time I was at the Barnes & Noble, just because, for this series, I had to get the book just for this series. So, yeah, that's basically my journey with it, and it was a good one. So, basically, that's it from me, and I hope that you guys keep watching, and I hope that the next video we do is just maybe we'll do like separate video vlogs. No more of the 10-part series because yeah, that's not a good thing there. So maybe we'll do like another one for the John Green ones and the Odyssey. I want to do one on the Tales of Norse Mythology because this gets pretty out there. That gets pretty trippy. World War Z is a good one. I could do a whole thing about freaking Poe. But yeah, so hope you guys enjoyed. Tekking 1001 signing out.